Welcome everybody to the 19th installment of the 25 days of Santa Recon series in the middle of May. Now you may be asking yourself, Recon, why in the flying flag, nerds, are you making this continuation in the middle of May? You know, we're not in December, we're not in January, nowhere near close to that, you know what I'm saying? And my answer to that is, every day is a Santa hat level day. Every day is Christmas if you want it to be. And that's why we are here today to talk about a very important series. We are here today to talk about a series that is very, very special and near and dear to my heart, man. I'm not sure where I would be in my writing career or in my YouTube journey without this series. This is the second manga that I got into after my beloved One Piece. It was the series that filled in the hole left in the soul after catching up to that magnificent story. And it was all thanks to my friend Austin back in high school, who told me to check out this series by Kentaro Miura called Berserk, man. Now, in this 25 Days of Santa Recon series, I originally wanted to dedicate it to series that I experienced later on in my journey, not really in the beginning, right? But with Berserk, I really wanted to include it within this 25 Days of Santa Recon series because my journey with this series has been very unique in the way that the tables have turned, in the way that I look at it, in the way that I view it, and how I once viewed it and how I view it now. And it's always been in a very positive light, but there are certain little differences upon this journey that have changed from all those years ago into where I am now. Where at one point in time I was a full-on Griffith man. Now I have converted over to the Guts side. And even though Griffith, I would arguably say, is still slightly over Guts in terms of my favorite character in the story, I guess as I've gotten older, I've grasped the complete message of what Kentaro Miura is trying to portray with Guts, and the themes that are so intertwined within his character arc. And I've come to really appreciate Guts as a character as time has gone on. And it's special in that way for me, man. It really, really is. You know, it shows me that this story is timeless, and it's a story that you can reread as you get older, and you're able to look at it through new eyes. And I guess every single story is like that, but with Berserk, especially because it goes into two different stories, with Griffith and with Guts, and the fact that as time has gone on, I've been able to completely transition and see from the other side. It's something really, really special to me, man. And it's a storytelling tactic that I absolutely adore and love, as I've stated multiple times in many different videos. Rivalry, aside from chasing dreams and freedom, is my favorite thing. Like, those three are my absolute favorite things that you could possibly tell in a story. And this right here, this rivalry, this relationship between Guts and Griffith is one of the greatest that I've ever seen. And it's because of the way that Kentaro Miura executed it upon its initial introduction, and how he continues to execute it to this very day. Because I would ask any person who's read Berserk, or maybe even people who aren't even into Berserk, but know of it. And I guarantee you, for a lot of those people, they will say that one of their most anticipated moments in the history of this medium is when Guts and Griffith eventually have their final standoff. And that is how important their relationship is to this story. And it's not just because of the meathead energy, because we all exude that meathead energy sometimes. And of course, there's going to be some wonderful panels. The action sequences are going to be incredible. The choreography is going to be amazing. But the clash of ideals and the storytelling that is going to take place because Guts and Griffith go at each other in that final matchup is going to be the years upon years of build-up. It's going to be the payoff to this wonderful story that's been told to this point in time, right? And that's what I want to make this video about. It's about the journey and how it started and where I am now with this wonderful story. If you're new to this 25 Days of Santa Recon thing, I basically come on here and ramble on about series that are really important to me, that I got into or has become really special to me within this past decade. And Berserk's been with me for, like I said, for a very, very long time. It was the one that I got into directly after One Piece. And man, dude, going onto the writing side, and I guess maybe even on the personal side as well, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure another character would have come along that would have given me that same type of grasp on reality that Griffith gave me when I first went through his character. You know, Griffith, when I first saw what Mira was trying to do with him, and I'm so glad I read the manga first. I know a lot of people are very fond of the 1997 anime, as they should be. It's a phenomenal adaptation and has arguably the greatest anime soundtrack of all time, and Guts' theme, which I was listening to before I came on here, by the way. It's a legendary theme, you know what I'm saying? Guts' theme, Forces, has that 1997 OST is magnificent, man. That in of itself is a masterpiece. But with Griffith, as he had that energy that really drew me into One Piece. That ambition, that drive to truly chase your dreams to the fullest extent. That's something that I've always been a part of. That's always been a part of me in the very core of my being. And anything that exudes that type of energy, I tend to follow. That's why I love Yoshihiro Togashi so much. Yoshihiro Togashi, even though he's portrayed as this lazy individual who barely puts out content, his stories are as ambitious as any that you will find. And I guess that's why I love One Piece as well as much as I do as well, because of the ambitious way the story's told. There is no other series like it. And I absolutely love stuff like that because they're going beyond the boundaries of the box. They're taking things way beyond what they could possibly take it. The way that they live life through their stories is ambitious in and of itself. And when it comes to Griffith, when I think back to the fact that this was made in the late 80s, early 90s, right, and in the entire Golden Age, Black Swordsman, and all that stuff, what Kentaro Miura did with Griffith really changed my outlook on how you can tell a story with a certain character, and adding on to that gray area that is in the middle of good and evil, right? Because with Griffith, even though I know the whole Griffith did nothing wrong thing exists, and there's individuals that will never forgive him no matter what happens, and there are individuals that will, whatever the case may be. For me, because I come at this through a writing standpoint, Griffith has always been one of my favorite characters because he's always been one of the most interesting characters. In terms of, he was the first one that I ever saw that while seeing their journey, I was able to empathize with them and be like, okay, I understand you 110% because this is me. An individual really willing to go out and chase whatever it is that they want to accomplish at whatever costs. That was me. And I completely 100% empathize with that side of Griffith. Literally doing whatever means necessary. This is a man that lived in a different era than I did. Had I lived in the medieval ages, who knows, I could have gone that same path, right? But with Griffith, it's the way that he's turned into this, into that villainous character that he eventually becomes that makes him so fascinating to me. Because whenever he loses everything, right? Because he's a man that has absolutely everything at the beginning of the story and continues to gain everything. He gains power, he gains knowledge, he gains the influences of so many different people, of kings and princesses, and everyone wants to follow him. He just exudes that energy, but the only thing that he wants after he's gained a grasp of it is human interaction with Guts. And this dream-like friendship between the two that eventually grows, which is why that friendship speech with Griffith to Charlotte, I believe it's in episode 14 of 1997 anime, is still one of my favorite scenes, because it's coming from him. He understands full on well how important that is to him, because for so long he was alone and chasing on this journey. He just had people who were following him, but he never had somebody that was on the same level as him. Even Casca, to a certain extent, was considered a follower, and not a person on the same level. Guts was the only one who really saw him as an equal, one-on-one, and Griffith was able to truly relate with him on that, because even though they went through different journeys in life, when they met up, they exuded this same type of energy, right? And Griffith finally found somebody like that. And so when he lost him for that little while, whenever he was at his darkest moments in time, I was like flagged. It made me think about everything that I'd gone through. I mean, what would I have done had I lost everything? And then I really lost everything. And then I was given an opportunity to get it all back. You see, in that point, I 100% understood Griffith's character. Where Kentaro Miura is a genius and makes it to where he's hateable and you want to see him get cut down is what he does afterwards. You know, whenever he becomes femto and he does what he does to Casca. And then that act in of itself completely changes the game, because then it makes it a character to where even though you understand his actions leading up to this point in time, that is unacceptable, and that is why Guts needs to cut him down. And that's where I find Kentaro Miura to be a genius as a writer, because he built up this entire Golden Age arc to make us understand why Griffith is the way that he is. And then in one moment, he turns from an extremely human and understandable character, and he commits this act that is absolutely unacceptable. And because of that, you now understand why Guts has gone on this journey that he went through in the first couple of volumes in the Black Swordsman arc to go cut this man down. Because had he not done that, Guts wouldn't have this insane rage to go after him, and the story would not move forward. But because that happened, and because he took out the rest of the Band of the Hawk, and because he took out every single individual that was so special and near and dear to him, now he took everything away from Guts as well. He made him understand the very same pain that he did. And it's insane how that was done. Because Guts did it unintentionally. Guts did it because he's just an isolated being. He doesn't like, and he basically did it for the betterment of Griffith whenever he went off by himself. But it hurt Griffith so much. And he just couldn't handle it and take it anymore. That was his weakness. And so, whenever he's presented with this opportunity to be able to go back and once again attain everything, but then that by itself didn't satisfy him. He also wanted to get back at this individual who made him go through so much pain. And then he goes and he commits these unacceptable acts. That to me is what truly makes such an interesting character out of him, where every single moment from then on out, I'm so intrigued by what happens between the two of them and what happens within Griffith, because it makes me want to be like, man, I know how you really are. You committed all of these unforgivable sins, but I know who you are at the very core of your being, which is why you fascinate me so much, because I know exactly how that is, And that's why Griffith for so many years was this character that I consider one of my favorites, and he still is. He 100% still is. Because he not only gave me like a different side of like Flagnards, these people that we consider to be these extremely bad individuals, they had this journey to get to that point. And Griffith was really the first character who showed that to me, especially since I was relatively young whenever I experienced Berserk in my teens. So he was the first character that really made me question that gray area and how far it can be extended and really pushed and pulled, And from a writing standpoint and just from a personal standpoint, I was like, man, it really made me think about so many different things and so many different people in our history, and it made me think about certain historical figures who committed, unforgivable acts and what led up to those points in times. What was their mindset like? What was their process like? And so Griffith kind of became the central figure for me attempting to empathize with other characters who were like that. In both real life and in just characters in fiction in general. And I've always appreciated him for that. And I think that's why my attachment to his character has stayed there. Because it's this admiration that I had for him, because I was like, man, I understand how you are. And then it's like, I can't forgive you for this unacceptable act, but I find you so fascinating as a writer to where it's like, now you've made me understand why so many things have happened within our actual history and within fiction, and why I feel about certain things in the way that I do. And he's written in such a way to where it's just so genius that if I ever even get close to writing a character like Griffith, I think I'll have made a great accomplishment, man. Because I've always had so much admiration for Kentaro Miura to be able to tell a story that ambitiously, to where it took around 113 chapters to really build off to why Guts really hates this man. Now let's transition over to Guts, right? And the journey into why it is that I've truly come to love his character. And I've always loved his character, but not as much as I do now. Now he's truly one of the greatest, man. And I think it ties back to after my initial read through of Berserk. which by the time I caught up, man, I don't remember if it was in the middle of the Millennium Empire arc or if it was a little after. I think it was a little after. I think it was a little after the Falcon arc. But when Berserk was heading into that stuff, and I was given an opportunity to go back and reread, I loved rereading the Black Swordsman and Lost Children arc back to back. That's even a practice that I still do to this very day. You know, where I sit down and I read those two arcs back to back. Now, why is that? After Gintama, I gained this new storytelling idea of wanting to showcase a character and have this character go through a bunch of struggles, but you see him struggling within his inner self, but you don't know exactly what it is that drives him. You see these little insights, but you don't know exactly what it is that drives him to be this character that he is. So having the knowledge of the Golden Age arc and going through Black Swordsman and Lost Children is like being a writer or like being an author and having the knowledge of what truly goes on, but you're writing this stuff knowing that none of the other characters know what's actually going on. So it's an amazing practice whenever I analyze Black Swordsman and Lost Children and read that back to back, because it kind of puts me in the perspective in the situation where I actually am, where I'm trying to tell a story where I have a character who has this drive to attempt to do something, but the audience is attempting to like figure it out piece by piece. They're trying to, you see these little hints and these little moments of like what it is that drives his character, these little moments of humanization that he has within the Lost Children arc, and it makes him so fascinating. But you don't know, you don't have the Golden Age arc. Because I do have the Golden Age arc, it gives me this much needed context, because in a lot of stories, whenever you find out the actual truth, you know, this is like this for mystery stories, stuff like Human Echo, and Gintama, whenever you witness an event that is absolutely insane, it recontextualizes absolutely everything, right? And with Berserk, I love reading those two arcs back to back, because I feel like with the Golden Age, those two arcs are recontextualized in their own way, because you understand why it is the Guts wants to do what he wants to do. You feel me? And that by itself is such incredible research and inspiration into writing my own story. And that's why I love that section of Berserk so much. It's why I think I still have the Conviction arc slightly over the Falcon of the Millennium Empire arc. It's because that Lost Children section and stuff leading up after that, you know, with Skull Knight and whatnot, because of Guts' journey, because we know what he's gone through and how he continues to persevere even through all of that, man. You know, one of my favorite chapters in the entire series, and it has continued to go up. I watched a YouTube video, I think it was last year, on the chapter Cracks in the Blade. And after I read that chapter, because I had always looked at Berserk and analyzed it in that type of way, but that chapter in particular really put into perspective why it is that I love Guts' character so much. Because Miura takes the time to not only give us these moments of Guts persevering and not knowing exactly where it is that he needs to go. He's on this journey, he's wandering, he's like, Flagnar's, I know I have to go kill this man. But while he's going on that journey, he finds other things that are incredibly important. These other things that, if he doesn't have them, he's gonna shatter in the same way that his blade would shatter. And so, with him having that massive blade, it's like a representation of his will, and how strong his will needs to be in order for him to actually make it to where his goal is. But that's also a representation of the amount of individuals that he's going to need to support him in order to get to where he wants to go. But also all of the individuals that he's going to have to meet to finally get through to the very core of his being, to actually make him realize that life is worth living. And right, when it comes to Guts and finding meaning in life and finding meaning in the small things, in the detours, in the family interactions, in the moments, in the downtime, you know, like you still have this overarching goal that you want to achieve because of this unforgivable act. But up until that, man, really figuring out all of this stuff, you know, is it truly worth it? Is it worth sacrificing everything that I have in the similar way that Griffith did? If I sacrifice all these wonderful individuals that I have with me, I would just be the same way as him. you know? And I love how we've been given hundreds upon hundreds of chapters of Guts' journey, because we only got to see around 60 to 70 to 80 of that in Griffith's side. But we are able to see how Guts' mindset is different in just that little way from Griffith's. Because now we're currently going through Guts' golden age, quote unquote, where he's going through his journey. And eventually I'm sure he's going to have to come to a similar decision as Griffith. The Behelit might come into his own thing one day, and he'll have to make a decision whether he wants to sacrifice everything in order to take on Griffith or not. I'm positive that's where we're going. And I guarantee you he's not going to do it, because of the journey that's led up until this point in time. And the more that I think about it, and the more that I read into Guts' character, and the more that I see how time has changed my perspective on Guts, because as I've lived through my own life and seen how my perspective has changed on certain things as time has gone on, how I've come to appreciate the small things and little things. And you put less emphasis on the bigger picture and more on the now and the present, because that's what's really important. That's what's made me really love Guts. That's what's made Guts on the same level as Griffith, as to whenever I was younger and I didn't really think about stuff like that. I was just thinking about the bigger picture, you know, an extremely ambitious individual trying to get things done. It was Griffith all the way, with Guts all the way down here. Now it's changed. I would even dare say on some days I have Guts higher, which if I were to tell that to like my 13-year-old self, my 14, 15-year-old self, he would be like, man, you're never going to have Griffith over Guts. But here I am. I'm sorry, you would never have Guts over Griffith. But here I am, thinking that very same thought. Because with Guts and with Griffith, and at least for me, because I experienced it when I experienced it, had I not experienced it when I did as a teenager, I'm not sure if I would have these same feelings. But because I experienced it really young, and I'm looking at it a little older, I'm like, Flagnards, man. This series is about the journey of life. It really is, man. You know, you have your ups and downs, you have your struggles, but what are you gonna do when something presents itself in front of you? You know, are you going to attempt to move over that obstacle? How are you going to do it? Would you be willing to sacrifice certain things to get what you truly want? Would you put the wants of others ahead of the wants of yourself? You know, a lot of these questions get answered within this story. And I found Guts to be a very, very inspirational character. A character that teaches perseverance, but also teaches love of the present moment. And that it's okay to not have everything figured out. It's okay. That's the way it is. As strong as this man was, and still is, there were things that he was learning every single day that led towards his development and where he is right now. You know, he didn't know everything. No one knows everything. No one comes out of the womb knowing everything, dog. And that's what Guts taught me, man. And I'll always appreciate his character for that. And I'll always appreciate Kentaro Miura for telling this story in the way that he did, to where I'm able to see these two sides which went through very same journeys, but towards one pivotal moment, they decided to take a different part in that journey. Whereas Griffith was willing to sacrifice everything, Guts is not. He's not, man. And that in of itself cuts into, it goes far beyond me just looking at this as an author and as a writer, and me looking at these as very interesting characters. It goes into the soul, and it does what a story should do, which is make you feel emotionally connected to the cast, to the characters, to the story, to the themes, and how it connects into your very own life. And I think after all of that, and after that realization, I've become a Guts man. After all these years, I really have. And the more I grow older, the more I've definitely, even more so, come to understand why Griffith took his actions. But it's like Flagnards, man. You understand even more so why this journey for Guts is so important, and why Kentaro Miura needed to tell this story. Because without the themes interwoven within Guts, and within his battles, his fights, his every waking bit of dialogue and text bubble, and the moments of trolling and sadness and happiness, all of it is connected to that very core theme and value when it comes to Guts' character pushing forward no matter what, man. Where instead of it being no matter at what cost, he's pushing forward no matter what to protect those things around him, man. Because now he's found things that are truly special to him. You know, true meaning in life. And I appreciate it, man. Like I said before, I appreciate it because it goes far beyond just looking at it in terms of interest. And in terms of how I could tell my own story and source of inspiration. It really goes into a life into a life lesson here, and I'll always appreciate Berserk for that, man. What an amazing story! And when it goes into Berserk, within itself, you know, with not just counting on the characters itself, I've always loved how Miura is able to balance comedy and the emotional moment, or comedy and the heavy action moment, because he has these little moments to where he'll show like Puck in a very trollish bubble, and the following panel is like this ultra realistic panel of like Falconia or Fantasia or something, right? And it's just like absolutely insane, and it'll be like flattering, but that is how the story is. That's how it is, man. You know, it is this balance between so many different emotions and things. That's just the way that life is. That's how life is, man. It's never just this one basic emotion. It's a whole bunch of different emotions, and that's represented through its imagery. And I've always loved the way that Miura utilizes visual imagery to the fullest extent. Berserk is not Berserk without its visuals, man. You know, it's a story that takes full advantage of its medium. I'm not sure if this is something that would translate better, perhaps, in a game or in a movie or in an anime, because they've tried it. They've tried all of them. But the one for me that's always hit the hardest, perhaps it is because I experienced it first in the manga, but it's just, it hits the hardest in the manga, man. It does. It really, really does. You know, Miura took full advantage of what he has in front of him to create this awesome story. And it's one that will always be special to me, and I hope that as I grow older, I continue to relate to it more and understand it more, and for me to connect to it more. Because when I first read this story, it was number 2 right under One Piece. And as time has gone on, I've found so many other stories that I've come to relate to even more. Like Berserk's gone a little lower on my list. It has never left my top 10, but it's gone a little lower. And in the past few years, it's once again climbed up again. And it's that shift in how I go through things in life. I get closer to this story. Is something that really makes this timeless. And I do wonder if I'm still alive at 50 and 60 and I'm able to look back and reread this again, how would I feel about it then? How would I feel about it then? I'm not sure, man. But because this story has a type of capability and that aspect to it, it'll always be legendary to me, man. And then, you know, with its incredible setting, the great characters, even aside from Guts and Griffith, the amazing themes, its incredible arcs, I'll always love it, man. And I look forward to, once again, it's going to happen this summer, I guarantee it, because it happens like a few times a year. I'm going to go back and reread Black Swordsman and Lost Children with the context of the Golden Age as inspiration to continue to write my own story, because it really is an incredible introduction whenever you have those two back to back, but you don't know exactly what was in the Golden Age. And even if you do know, what I see, it gives you these two paths to where, let's just say you do it exactly how Miura did it, it still works perfectly. But if you do it in another way and you take the Golden Age out, but you still tell those two back to back, and then let's just say you put Golden Age after, you put Golden Age way down the line, all of it still works because of the way that Miura writes Guts. The themes, he himself is Berserk. No matter what happens, it's still gonna be Berserk. And how do you maintain that tone, that energy, that vibe, even if you don't have that knowledge or not? And that stuff to me is what makes the series so impressive. It's never let go of that atmosphere, never let go of that tone. It's just a massive source of inspiration, honestly, man. Berserk greatness, dude. Thank you for allowing me to ramble about this incredible story. This has been the 25 Days of Santa Recon. I will see y'all next time. Let me know who y'all like more between Guts and Griffith in terms of, and you could have two answers, because for me, I could say right now, I also might have two answers, where from a writing standpoint, I feel like I like Griffith more because he's more interesting, which is of relatability, and of really wanting to see a character succeed from the bottom of your heart, and wanting to see him be happy, and to find him as a source of inspiration. Guts all the way, you know? So let me know how y'all feel about those two characters, about the story of Berserk, maybe your journey with Berserk, how it may have impacted you, let me know, man, in the comment section down below if you feel like sharing. But if not, man, I will see y'all next time. Have an awesome day. Berserk greatness. Go ahead and listen to that Guts theme. If I wasn't gonna get a copyright strike, you know what? I might just risk it, man, and play it. I don't know. I don't know what to do, man. But I'll see y'all next time. Berserk greatness. Thank you, Kentaro Miura, for giving us this wonderful story. We're getting another chapter in a small time span for the first time in a very, very long time. So can't wait to see this wonderful conversation we're about to have between the Skull Knight himself and Guts, bro. Hopefully we get some King Geyzaric awesome sauce here soon. But I'll see y'all next time, man.